So we're going to do something a little bit different today. Way back at the very beginning of 2019 in January, we opened the year with a question box style service, which is a service where we solicit questions from the congregation and then I sort of spontaneously answer those questions. And it's a fun service to do, but I can only answer a small handful of questions in a service. And you all had a lot of really good questions about a great many things. You asked questions about my process as a seminarian, about the future of UUI, about the nature of Unitarian Universalism. You asked how we can live out our values. You asked about the meaning of life and the nature of divine. So many questions. So this summer, I thought one of the things that I would do is go back and answer some of these questions that you asked. Now, some questions got asked many times in a lot of different ways. One question very much on everybody's mind is how to deal with hate, intolerance, meanness, or people who are just generally awful to us. Right? If we believe in love and tolerance and the inherent worth and dignity of every person, then how do we deal with hate and intolerance and people who do not recognize our worth and dignity? Right? That's one of the truly big questions in the world. How do we respond to badness? And it deserves its own sermon. So we will do that in 2 weeks. Another set of questions touched on the metaphysical. What is the nature of God, the soul? What is truth with a capital T? Life after death, and so on. So we'll devote a sermon to those thorny theological questions later in the summer, get those put to bed. And then you had a lot of specific questions about ethics and ethical living in general. So we'll do a sermon this summer on how to be a good person. So that should be simple enough and non-controversial. But in the meantime, you also had a lot of questions about me, about UUI, about what I'm doing, what UUI is doing, what our future looks like. And many of these questions concerning the near future of UUI are very much pressing questions. So as we enter this 40th anniversary of UUI's existence as a congregation, you all will be challenged to do a lot of thinking about what you all want for the next 40 years of UUI's life. So I thought it would make sense to launch the summer thinking about some of these questions that are a little closer to home. So the first question that you had was about my process in becoming a minister. Someone asked, how long until you will be ordained? And this requires a little bit of explanation because it's a little complicated. Within the tradition of Unitarian Universalism, congregations and only congregations have full authority to ordain ministers. This congregation and any UU congregation has the right to ordain whomever it wants, whenever it wants. That is your right. Separate from that is the question of being fellowshipped with the Unitarian Universalist Association. The UUA, the umbrella organization, has the authority to confer what they call fellowship on a candidate for ministry. And fellowship is their way of indicating to a congregation that an individual has met very rigorous tests and criteria that they are qualified and prepared to undertake UU ministry. So the usual process is for someone to be fellowshipped with the UUA first and then go to a congregation to be ordained. It is very rare for someone to be ordained outside of being fellowshipped. And there are good reasons why it is rare. So as we discussed last week, I am an order muppet, which means I like to follow processes. And I have the utmost respect for this particular process. So I will be seeking fellowship with the UUA, and then after that I would be seeking ordination. So the process of being fellowshipped is fairly lengthy, it's fairly involved. One of the requirements is that I go to seminary and get what is called a Master of Divinity degree, which I think is a funny name, but there you have it. This is a 3-year degree going full-time, and I just finished my 2nd year. So in 1 more year, I will have mastered divinity, for what it is worth. I'm required to complete a full-year internship at a congregation serving under another UU minister. I just completed this requirement by serving as UUI's full-time director of ministry under the Reverend Barbara Child. And a third requirement is that I complete 400 hours of chaplaincy in a hospital setting. This is the adventure that I am embarking on this summer. So full-time from June to August, I will be doing clinical pastoral education at IU West in Avon. And then there's a fourth requirement that I read approximately 1 million books, very specific to Unitarian Universalism, and that happens outside of any other education that I'm getting. So once I have done all of these things, I put together like a comprehensive packet about yay thick, demonstrating all of the different ways in which I am a suitable candidate for Unitarian Universalist ministry. I send this to a group called the Ministerial Fellowship Committee. They read it, I meet with them, I preach to them, they talk to me for about an hour, and then that's basically like thumbs up or thumbs down, like Roman gladiator arena style. Or they can say, we'd like to see more development in this, that, or the other thing. Like, do these things, come back and talk to us again. So if all goes well, and like knocking on all the wood in the world, I could be fellowshipped by the summer or the fall of next year, of 2020. And then it would be appropriate for this congregation to ordain me if it saw fit to bestow that honor upon me. That is the timeline that we are looking at. So the next question that you posed to me was, will you be able to stay at UUI? That is, could I serve UUI as an ordained minister? My best current understanding is that because I am already serving at UUI in some capacity, the rules would allow me to stay. It would not be against the rules for me to serve as your ordained minister. You could call me, and I could accept that call. But this question is getting a little bit ahead of things, right? There's a lot of discerning that needs to be done before we come to that question. So calling a minister is one of the most impactful decisions that a congregation will ever make. It is a significant responsibility to do it with the utmost wisdom and care. So one of the things that will happen in the upcoming church year is that the Board of Trustees is going to be helping you all have a big conversation about what you collectively want for the future of ministry at UUI, starting with whether you want to call a minister at all. And then if you do, what is your vision for the future of UUI and how does a minister fit into that? And what do you want that minister to do, right? And what qualities does a minister need to have to serve you well? And after you've done all of that discerning and you're clear on what you want and what you need, then it would make sense to talk about whether I might be a good fit to serve that vision. But I don't want to put the cart too far in front of the horse because I still have to finish seminary. So another question that was very much on people's mind and came up in all kinds of different ways are, what are the challenges of a growing church? Should the congregation be planning for a bigger church, a need for more space, more people, more traffic, etc.? So right now this congregation is growing pretty robustly, which is wonderful. And it is a tribute that you all are building something special here together. You are creating something that feeds people's spirits and excites people's minds and hearts, and people want to be a part of it. But as this question points out, there are some challenges associated with growth. Some of these are logistical, like setting and parking and how many seats we have and things like that. We're starting to see a little bit of challenge with that, but your board is already thinking about a strategic plan for the future that will meet our infrastructure needs, assuming that we continue to grow. So that is sort of the Board of Trustees problem, and they're working on that. For everyone else, the challenge associated with growth is that growth brings change. Now, if you're a new person, everything about this setting is unfamiliar to you, right? So you're already experiencing a lot of change. This is an unfamiliar environment. If you've been here a long time, then growth means that there are a lot of new people with new ideas, different needs, different assumptions about what we're going to do here, and so on. So as new and different people become a part of the life of this church, the church will absolutely change. Guaranteed. So the two things that are most needed in a community that is experiencing this kind of change is curiosity and generosity. You will be called upon, first of all, to be curious about other people's experiences and their perspectives. Because it is 100% guaranteed that we will not see everything alike. Now, that's a good thing, right? Unitarian Universalism celebrates diversity as a strength for a spiritual community. And we believe that even disagreements are an opportunity for us to grow and learn when those disagreements are had in an environment of love and trust. So to build that environment of love and trust is what your priority, and the way you do that is by being curious about one another and listening openly with an honest heart. The other thing is that in a community this diverse, we can't have all of our needs met perfectly all of the time. That's impossible. So you need to be generous in your understanding that something that doesn't work for you may be meeting the needs of the person who is sitting right next to you, and understand that something that is working for you may not be working for the person sitting right next to you. And sometimes it's just going to be like that. Or understanding that a change that may seem like minor and trivial to you involves something that has 30 years of cherished memories wrapped up in it for someone else. So it's not trivial to them at all. So my advice to you all as we grow together is to be curious about one another and to be generous to one another. And if you can do those two things, it'll be beautiful. Next question was, how can I get more involved at UUI? This is a great question. There is a lot going on at UUI, and it can be a little overwhelming sometimes to figure out how to take that first step to get more connected. So first, make sure you're getting the e-blast and that you've liked us on Facebook, so you're getting information about events. And then I would suggest trying out one of the many social or discussion groups that are available so you can just start to meet people. For example, today before the service at 9 a.m., there was a Credo Forum. That's the first Sunday of every month. People get together to talk about fascinating things. Today it was extraterrestrial life, which is a subject that I love. Wednesday, there's Ladies' Night Out Dinner. Tuesday, June 11th, there's a senior social hour, which meets in the morning. For parents with little kids, Wednesday the 12th, there's the Parents of Preschoolers group, pitch-in dinner, and so on. So there are lots of opportunities to meet people in a fun and casual way. There are also interest groups like the Spiritual Writing Group, the Photography Club, the Fiber Arts Group, and so on. You can teach a class in religious education. That's an easy way to meet people, or help out with a coffee hour, and so on and so forth. In the fall, we will have our annual Find Your Spot Festival, when like every group at UUI imaginable will have a table in the social hall and a place where you can sign up and get more information. So look for that as a way to make a more regular commitment. You can also talk to me or talk to the membership team about ways to get connected to what interests you. And that is for everybody, whether you've been here for a day or 30 years. We're here to help you with that. So my advice is, unless you are someone who likes to leap in with both feet, start small by making connections and choosing those activities that feed your spirit first, that work for your life. And then when you feel comfortable, consider making a bigger commitment. The great thing about UUI is that ultimately this is a volunteer-run organization. So everyone has the opportunity to do pretty much everything at one time or another if they want. And there are a bajillion ways to make a contribution. The other thing that I would want to say, though, is that people's participation in the church naturally changes as their life circumstances change. Participation in a church community waxes and wanes, and this is normal and this is okay. So people sometimes worry that there's an expected amount of participation in volunteering, or that if they're not doing all of the things, then they're not doing it right. But that is not true, right? So you may be in a season of your life where your participation, your gift to this community is just your presence on Sunday morning. So you come here and you're with us and we worship together and your spirit is fed, and then you go home and you come again when you can. This is also a gift to our community, and that is what the church is here for. So let the church be here for you. Next question. We need a garden committee. I admire this person for boldly stepping outside of the question format. UUs as a community can always be counted on to color outside of the lines. I have no opinion on whether we need a garden committee. But if you have an idea for this community that does not fit within the existing structure of stuff, I would encourage you to reach out to the UUI Board of Trustees, your elected leaders, and make your idea known. Or come to a board meeting, which is the second Wednesday of every month. There's a time set aside at the beginning of every board meeting where anyone can come and speak their mind to the Board of Trustees, ask questions, present ideas, have a conversation. They even put the time right up front so you don't have to stay for the whole board meeting, right? We want to hear from you. This community is what its people make it. So if a garden committee is part of your vision for UUI, I say go for it. Next question, how can UUI get more involved in the community? Also a great question. When UUI was founded back in 1979 by 97 people, they put out questionnaires and they asked those people, what do you want in this church that you're building together? And one of the ideals that was expressed by many of the founding members in many different ways is that they wanted UUI to be a church that serves the community, including our local Butler-Tarkington community and the larger Indianapolis community. So if you want to help this congregation live into its vision, here are some things that I would suggest to you. UUI has regular Butler-Tarkington neighborhood area cleanups, at least annually, and more often than that. This is a wonderful service to the neighborhood, so look for the next cleanup and lend a hand. UUI collects non-perishable food items for the Boulevard Place Food Pantry every Sunday in the social hall. If you are financially able, make it a generosity practice, either for yourself or for your family, to bring something to donate every Sunday as the last thing that you do as you're heading out the door to church. Consider joining UUI's Social Justice Committee and bringing your ideas and your energy to that team. Even if committees aren't your thing, if you have a great idea, I'm sure they would love to hear it. Related to that, did you know UUI makes Beacon Fund grants of up to $1,000 available to fund projects that would involve UUI in helping the community? So if you have an idea that you're excited about for a way that UUI could get involved in this neighborhood or the larger community, and it just needs some resources to come alive, consider applying for a Beacon Fund grant. We set aside money every year to fund these projects. So since 2014, UUI has also been a member of Faith in Indiana, which is a coalition of churches and other groups here in the state that are working to create a more just and inclusive Indiana that serves all communities. In 2019, Faith in Indiana set a goal to cut gun violence in Indianapolis in half. And they're going to do that using proven strategies that have already worked in cities like Boston, Oakland, Cincinnati, and South Bend. It's called Targeted Gun Violence Intervention. So this past Wednesday, I had the privilege of sitting with Faith in Indiana representatives at the mayor's State of the City address when he announced that he would fully fund this initiative that we have been working to bring to Indianapolis. And the mayor specifically said in his speech, calling out our organization, "Thank you, Faith in Indiana, for your leadership on this issue in reducing gun violence in our city." And I can tell you that years of advocating and organizing and relationship building went into creating that moment of the mayor signing on to our vision and putting money behind it. And I can tell you that members of UUI were there every step of the way. Every step of the way, this congregation was a part of doing that work. So I am very proud of this church's involvement in work which is going to quite literally save lives in our city. I hope you are proud of it too. And if you want to make a difference in the future of Indianapolis, then I suggest you look for opportunities to support Faith in Indiana in the coming year. There will be lots of things to do. And finally, I want to come back to this idea about being curious about one another. This is a community full of people who are passionate, who are energized about creating a better world for everyone. You all really do seek to live out your UU values. So people at UUI in their individual lives are serving the greater good in countless ways all the time. You all are involved in so many different organizations and projects, I could not possibly list them all, right? So there's an amazing breadth of experience and commitment right here in this room. Get to know each other, right? Talk to each other about your interests and your passions and what keeps you up at night and what breaks your heart. And you will find that there are people who care deeply about the same issues that you care about, and there are people who are already working to address those issues. And there are many, many rich opportunities for you all to work together. Okay, last question for today. Is there one particular UU principle that speaks to you personally above all the others, and if so, why? And this is a tough one. because each is important in its own way. But the principle that speaks to me most personally is the seventh principle, which calls us to have respect for the interdependent web of existence of which we are all a part. This is, I think, our theologically deepest principle, because this is the principle that reminds me that all life is interconnected and interrelated, that everything we do touches everything else, and so there is no such thing as an isolated individual. There is no such thing as an isolated individual, and as such, what we do matters, right? The choices that we make matter. The seventh principle reminds me of my solidarity with my fellow human beings, that as Dr. King said, we are woven up into a single garment of destiny such that I cannot be free until you are free. Then it reminds me of my kinship with all living beings, with all creatures. It reminds me that the great dance of life on earth is a continuous creative unfolding that has taken place over billions of years, and it holds my life no more and no less lovingly than that of the elk or the whale or the great redwood. It is a humbling principle that reminds me of my dependence on our earth and of my great responsibility to care for her. And it is an exalting principle that tells me I am a part of something awesome and ancient, mysterious and magical. All life comes from the same source, and all life faces the same destiny, and we are all part of this mysterious dance. So for me, the appropriate response to this is wonder and gratitude, and wonder and gratitude, and wonder and gratitude. And I consider these the fundamental religious emotions. And so this is my foundational religious principle. As the poet said, life is the only way to get covered in leaves, catch your breath on sand, rise on wings, to be a dog or stroke its warm fur. Life is the only way to stumble on a stone, end up soaked in one downpour or another, mislay your keys in the grass, and to follow a spark on the wind with your eyes, and to keep on not knowing something important. So may we be grateful for this community of wonder and gratitude, which is there for us when we're soaked and when we stumble, which will take a positive stance on the question of diving into leaf piles and ending up covered in leaves, which encourages us to question, to follow the spark on the wind, and where a good day ends in laughter and fellowship as we keep on not knowing something important, all of us together. Blessed be, and amen.